back. I've been busy doing a lot of different things lately, like filming and courses and stuff. So today is going to be one of those mostly free-for-all days where you all can ask questions. I'll try to answer them. Hopefully we get on a discussion, on a roll on a couple of things here. But one of the things that I did want to bring to your attention today is, I get asked all kinds of questions. Well, how do I know exactly what to study, when to study, or not when to study, but what to study? Now, some of you have been in here before, have probably heard this a little bit, but I'm going to pull up something here. How many of you are studying for either A+ or Network Plus right now?
A+ for me.
A+?
A+
Pretty much everyone?
A+.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, give me a second to find something here. And let's see. Sorry, it's taking me so long. There we go. So can you see this A+ objectives list?
Yes.
All right. So I'm actually going to jump to the second exam because this is a better example of what I'm trying to convey here today. All right. So one big question that I get from people is, what types of questions can I expect on the test? How deeply do I need to study the material? And what's cool is, especially for CompTIA, this is a really good example. Hold on a second, what's here? I had to hide my dial pad there. Okay. So the question is, how much, what do I need to know how to do? How deep do things go? In other words, how can I sort of crack the code here, figure out what's on an exam? And every vendor is different. CompTIA, if you look at the big three vendors for technical certifications that we cover, that would be CompTIA, Cisco, and Microsoft. I would say that what I'm about to show you applies best to CompTIA because they seem to be the most straight up about things. So the question is, well, how do I know how deeply to study things? What do I actually need to know versus not? Well, one thing I always tell people is before you sit for an exam, and this is going to be a painstaking process, I know, especially for these really long objective lists for CompTIA tests, but take the time to go through every objective, line by line, make sure you know what they're talking about. And what I really want you to pay attention to here, some of you have heard this before, but Mia, you could, oh, okay, cool, no worries. I was going to say, what I'm about to tell you, it's kind of for some of those Microsoft tests too, but mostly technical stuff just doesn't apply to Office nearly as much. But anyway, okay, so the thing I want to bring your attention to is this. The first word, first phrase of each objective basically gives away the kind of question you're going to get. Now, what do I mean by this? Where you see compare and contrast, or words like define, or understand, or whatever, you're looking at these. This piece up here is not going to be a very good candidate for a simulation question, okay? It's compare and contrast. So basically, they're going to be asking you which exists in which feature. So you could, I'll give you an example here. You could get a question that's like, well, which of these features do not exist in Windows 8? Well, Arrow does, gadgets do not. Gadgets pretty much ended after Windows Vista. Technically, they're in 7 also, but they're nowhere to be found in Windows 8. Things like that. Side-by-side apps, Metro UI. Metro UI is new to Windows 8. So when you see compare, contrast, define, those are more your definition questions. You're not going to be asked to do anything there really, but you're going to want to know how to define everything there. So that's one thing that you can go through here, like upgrade paths, okay? They're not going to have you perform an upgrade on this particular exam, but compare and contrast various features, okay? So you have to know, what can I upgrade? What can't I upgrade? That kind of stuff. Now, when you look at, given a scenario, install Windows PC, okay, given a scenario, install, there's a keyword right there, install. This could be a simulation question. Now, the one thing I want you to keep in mind on simulation questions is, not seeing anything on the screen? Let me just make sure I'm presenting. Is anybody, Oh, on screen. Oh, okay. Hang on. Good thing I haven't talked too much yet. Okay, is that better, anybody? Everybody, can you see an outline there? All right. So I guess I need to take a course in learning which screen to share when I'm doing these things. No problem. I'm trying to move this over here too, get this out of the way. So, okay, back to what we were doing here. So you can see the outline? Yes, no?
Yes,
Yep.
but could you
Cool.
enlarge it a little bit, Jason?
Pardon me?
Can you make it a little bigger?
Yeah, sure.
I'm working off my laptop. My
just-
monitor died. It's a little small.
Oh, geez. Yeah, let me just zoom in on this a little bit for you there. How's that? That better?
That's much better. Thank you.
Yeah, a few letters are cut off, but you know that doesn't matter much for this discussion here. Hang on, just one second. Okay. So yeah, given the scenario, install Windows PC using appropriate system tools. So the keyword here is install. Now, what I was just getting at though is keep in mind the test questions are not going to have you do something that's going to take you half an hour. At least you hope not. No, they don't. Okay, you're talking for any simulation question, and Tristan, you can back me up on this, but for simulation questions, usually we're talking 5 minutes tops. You know, if you know the answer to the question. Now, if you're fumbling through it, it might take you 6, 7, 8 minutes, but they're not looking to jam you here. Okay, they're not. This is these tests are testing how well you know the stuff, not how fast you can do it. Okay, so you don't have to worry about studying. Well, do I need to know like every step start to finish on an upgrade or an installation? Well, yeah, but you're not going to have to do all that on the exam. You might get asked to start one, or you might get a test question asking you to finish one. You know, maybe setting up the user account, for example, and setting up the initial password on the system. That might be something you have to do in a simulation here. But you're not going to be asked to do something that's going to take you too long. And that goes for any exam, really. So something worth keeping in mind, all right? But given a scenario, install this. And when you see given a scenario, okay, I want you to pay really close attention right this second. When you see given a scenario, you're more than likely getting a question that's one of those long paragraphs to where you might have to interpret a little bit what fits and what doesn't. Okay, so let me give you an example of this just off the cuff here, all righty? So types of installation. So let's go with something like, you know, or a remote network installation here. Okay, so when it says given a scenario, the test question's not typically going to be, well, which one of these scenarios does blah, 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 blah. No, the test questions are going to go something like this. Charlie, an IT guy, has 300 machines to upgrade to Windows 8, and the machines are scattered all over the building, a couple of buildings maybe, whatever. But see, if you know the objective well, and you know the types of installations that we have, well, the minute that you know that this is going to be deployed to a bunch of different locations, it's probably some kind of network installation. It's not going to be something where someone's going to carry the DVD around and go, you know, walk around the 300 machines, get in the car, and go do the next 300. No. This is going to be some kind of remote network installation. But they're not going to ask the question in such a way where it's like, well, you know, which installation does blah, blah, blah. No, if it's given a scenario, they're going to be putting it in a scenario. They're going to be putting it in a real-life situation. So here's the advice. If in doubt, put yourself in a situation. If I'm Charlie, if I'm the one installing Windows to 300 users over 5 different locations, how would I best do it? You know, if you're getting paid by the hour, maybe you do walk around everybody's PC, but I kid. No, seriously. You're going to be trying to deploy this remotely. So that's the kind of mindset that you want to have for these test questions. And then it's almost like it becomes kind of fun. And I know the word fun and taking a test, it's not in the same sentence. So, you know, I use the term loosely here, but it kind of gets your mind off the fact, oh, I'm not just taking a test, I'm solving a problem. And then you don't think so much, oh, I'm taking a test right now. I mean, I don't know if that'll work for you, but that's worked for me fairly well in the past. So anyway, so that's a given a scenario one. All right, so let's see what else we have here. I'm not going to do every single one here, obviously, but okay, given a scenario, apply appropriate Microsoft command line fields. Again, possible simulation here. Or if it says given a scenario, they might do a description. You know, Jane, an IT supervisor, needs to get a bunch of folders copied from, you know, one location to another, wants to do in a command prompt. So which one of these commands would you use? I'm asking you. If you have to copy folders over or entire contents of folders, what would you use of all these?
Copy, X copy, a robo copy.
Yeah, X copy actually, because then because with X copy you can go with multiple files once. Same with robocopy, but yeah. Anyway, so that's the whole thing. The idea is that you want to think, okay, well, if I'm that person, what am I doing here? All right, so that's where all these given scenarios come in. And those of you who have taken these CompTIA tests, you can back me up on this one. Oh, look, there's here. Jim's here. Yeah, of course. Just waiting for him to say something. Nice. For those of you who don't know what the running joke is between myself and Jim, see if you can figure it out if he chats away, but I won't give it away yet. It's the same Jim that I think must be. So here's another given a scenario, all right, which one you would use. So you have a lot of different scenarios here. And again, those of you who have taken the CompTIA test, you can back me up on this. They do have questions. They're not like 3 paragraphs deep, but you know, you might get a decent-sized paragraph explaining a situation, and then you've got to figure out what to do. Which, by the way, is the whole idea of scenarios, because you get these things in real life also. CompTIA does a pretty good job of putting you in real-life situations on the exams. So here's another one here, okay? Other operating systems and technologies. Now here's a keyword right here, identify. Identify. Identify just means know about it. Okay, we're not asking you to do it. There's no scenarios here. By the way, this is a really good example because I've been asked this one multiple times, which is, okay, it's a vendor neutral exam. We're talking about A+. CompTIA always advertises they're vendor neutral, but you know, you can't be 100% vendor neutral. You got to put some vendors in there, right? So here you've got some stuff on Mac. All right, and then you've got Linux around here someplace. Here are some Linux commands, okay? So I know one person, though, you know, okay, I'm just going to flash this on the screen for a second so one of the audience members here can get a little excited right about now. But while I leave that up there, the whole idea is, okay, they're saying identify. That means know about it. So you need to know what these commands do, but you're not going to be asked a simulation question very likely on this one. So you know, the good news is you probably don't need to know all the different attributes that go with these. You know, when we did the A+ course, when we filmed it, gosh, well over a year ago now, getting on almost a year and a half. Yes, I brought up the Macintosh. We showed you all this stuff. But even then I said, just be aware, know what it does. You know, like I'm not giving away what's on the exam or anything like this, but, you know, you might get a question that says, you know, what do you use on a Mac to store passwords? Does anybody know what the answer is on this? What you use on a Mac to store passwords? It's one of these, what, 9 features.
Keychain.
Yeah, it's a keychain, exactly. Yeah. See if you know that, you'll do fine on that test question. Because look, what did the objective say? It said identify. So, see if we have any more good ones here. I'm not going to do too many more of these. Okay, here you go. Given a scenario. Identify basic cloud concepts. Here's another one, okay? You just need to know what the differences are among SaaS, IaaS, and PaaS. You don't need to know how to set it up. You need to know what rapid elasticity is. You don't need to know you don't need to do it. Okay, here's another keyword right here. Summarize the properties and purpose of services provided by network hosts. That's another, just know about it. Know what a proxy server does. Know what a DNS server does. And Jim's on the loose today. More talking than in a while. But yeah, the whole idea is here's my big point. Okay, here's a big takeaway for this part. Pay close attention to the first word or phrase of the objective. That's going to tell you how deeply you need to study it. Simple as that. Any questions so far? I know a few of you probably heard that speech before, but there's a few of you new ones in here. And you know what? If you haven't taken any of these tests and wondering, so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get rid of some of the I don't want to say nervousness, because everyone's nervous. Almost everyone's nervous when they take a test. That's okay. Use it to your advantage. The angst, if you will, of what's on here. And again, it's the first word, first phrase of the objectives. Usually give it away.
Hey, Jason.
Yes.
One thing that I do have to add for the newer people is I'm with Security Plus. I'm going on my 4th CompTIA test here. Like it's SAS and IAS and PASS, and then of course IDS and IPS. Go through all the objectives for all the different, if you're taking all the CompTIA tests, go through all the objectives and you'll see all these names over and over and over again, and you slowly get deeper and deeper and deeper into these. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and listen, when you're studying all this stuff, understand one thing. You are not going to remember most of what you read on or hear or see on the first go-around. You're not. I mean, look, be happy if you remember 15 to 20% of it on the first go-around. But it's like anything else. You know, it's like learning to play an instrument. The more times you do it, the more it starts to become instinctive, and that's how you best learn. Steve, how you doing? Anyway. So, you know, and speaking of which, thanks for bringing this up. With these objectives, you have the acronyms in the back for all these. Yes, there's a chance you could get a question on any of these, although some of these are pretty old. So the chances of you're getting a question on them are probably not that good. But anyway, so that's my big speech for now is, you know, I'm going to put this in the OneNote file. I know Tristan's recording this. There's not much to write here, but oops, see, this is what happened. I added the larger size. Okay. For any test, go through the objectives line by line and pay close attention to the first words, phrases in the objectives. So just to give you a couple of examples that we went through. Identify. Well, that's you know the terms and definitions. If you see given a scenario, be ready for a question with a paragraph-long situation. By the way, those of you studying the Cisco stuff right now, there's a lot of scenario questions in there. A lot of scenario questions. So you really got to have that hat on. You really got to put yourself in the mindset of, okay, what would I do here? What would I look for first if this is a problem? You know, if I'm trying to set this up for a router, how would I do it? You know, those are important. So given a scenario, be ready for a question-long paragraph with a situation here. Also, if you know, look for action words like install, troubleshoot, or remove, or set up, or whatever. Okay, those are your simulation type questions. And listen, this is not a hard, fast rule for every single vendor. This is just a trend. But really pay attention to the first part of each objective line. That's going to give you a big clue as to what's on there. All right. So my goal here was to take up less than half the time, which I've managed to do for once. Okay, floor is all yours. Who's got questions? Bring it on. See what I can do.
I have one for you, Jason. It's
Yep.
more like a technical question, Net Plus related, or actually
Yeah.
this is probably more related. But okay, so let's say you have an access point, right? Supports .11 AC, and it has gigabit ports, and you want to stream to a device that it supports .11 AC, but it has a fast Ethernet port. Are you going to get better speeds with the wired connection, with the fast Ethernet connection, or with the .11 AC? With the Wi-Fi?
That all depends.
Exactly.
On the ISP?
It would depend on all the factors, whether there's interference on the wireless, there's whether you actually are getting the third through to the router before it even sends out. It also depends on how many people are using said router. It's not a straight cut and paste answer.
Okay, so let's do a little drawing here, okay? Because Tristan, this is something good you brought up. Because can't draw here today. Okay, so Tristan, play that back for me if you don't mind. So you've got you say you got a router? It supports 802.11 AC?
Right. And it has gigabit ports.
Okay. Okay, all right. All right. And then what are you trying to hook up to it?
And then you're trying to stream to a device, just a streaming device.
You say?
Yeah, you want to stream. Or transfer files. Maybe that changes the equation, transferring files. But
Actually, it doesn't.
Well, it takes internet out of the equation, right?
Well, okay. Now let's just say for the sake of discussion, and this is good, because there's actually a little bit of a trick question situation going on here. I'll explain in a minute. Okay. So let's just say this is internal, right? Small business, house, something like that. We can agree on that?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Okay, so internal building. All right, so you want to stream with it or whatever, or let's say even, let's just have some fun with this. Let's say over here, you've got a switch or something. Switch or something over here, or you got some kind of device over here. Let me see if I can draw this. Okay. Then here, it supports 802.11 AC. Did I say switch? I didn't even say that. You got a wireless access point.
Right. But this one has fast Ethernet ports. It doesn't have gigabit ports.
Fair enough. Okay. Now let's say you've got, let's just really finish this equation up. All right. So you're trying to figure out this is not necessarily a test question, okay, ladies and gents, but something like this can lead to test questions, all right? So you're trying to get maximum mileage for your situation here, okay? So the first question that I would ask you is, what's the fastest quote-unquote speed you're going to get off 802.11 AC? That's going to determine a few things here. And I know if you look this up online, you're going to get 10 different answers.
Yeah, the most common one that I see is like 1.3.
1.3, okay. All right. Let's go with that. So let's just say that for the 802.11 AC, fastest speed possible, approximately 1.3 gigs. Fine. Okay. All right, that's fair enough. Okay. So a couple of you are bringing up some points about this. Obviously, we have to account for interference and things like that. Now, of course, if you have a direct wire connection, you're not worried about interference. You're just sharing bandwidth. So here's the first thing that I would be looking at is, all right, if you've got fast Ethernet ports here and gigabit ports here, now let's say you take the wired connection here. What's the connection speed going to be this way?
It's going to be 100 megs max, right?
Right. Right. Okay. Okay. So if you look at this, a couple of you saying you can't really see the screen here, so let me just make sure. The thing keeps wanting to go to my first screen. I don't know why. I should have just put the stuff on my first screen, but whatever. Okay, so if this is a wired connection here, yeah, you're only going to get fast Ethernet speed because what's the rule? The rule is the slowest, the turtle wins every time. Okay? Tortoise never beats the hare in these situations. So, if it's a wired connection here, it's 100 megabits. So you don't want to run stuff through that device over there. Now, if you've got, 8 to 10 devices plugged in and they share that, and then that's okay. But here, it's just, you're only, between these two specific devices, the fastest you're getting is 100. So, if you're trying to connect those two devices up there, I'd use the wireless. Chances are you're going to get a better speed with that. I mean, 1.3 versus 100 is a big, big difference, even if you have interference on the wireless. Now, over here, we're talking about using this as a streaming device where you got a machine over here. Now, as far as what you'd use to connect these two up, well, that all depends what this machine has, doesn't it? See, here on this machine, now you got to look at two things. All right? What do I have for a network card? And does this machine have wireless capability? And if so, what is it? So if it's also 802.11 AC, well, then I'd probably use the wireless. If your NIC is a gigabit speed NIC, well, now you go get yourself a cable and connect. So, yeah, we didn't really tease this out too much. I mean, we weren't really, there's a blank screen now.
Yes.
Okay. Take 3. Trust me, I didn't draw too much while we were waiting. Okay, can you see it now?
No.
All right, cool. No, William can't see it?
No, cannot see it.
Did you see blank? Jim can't see it either?
I can see it. Yeah, I've got it too.
All right, hang on a second. Let me try something just a little bit different here. Hold up. Hold on. No problem. We can adjust.
Hey, Tristan, while he's fiddling around that, basically, your speed for internet is going to be only as fast as the slowest point, in this case, the fast Ethernet.
Gotcha.
So, but he does make a good point where if your computer cannot handle a gigabit, the router or the modem can't handle a gigabit speed, then there's no reason to use the because you're only going to get the speed of the NIC at that point.
Right.
Yeah, so really, go ahead.
I was going to say, are you bottlenecked by the ISP? When it comes to Wi-Fi?
It depends on your ISP. They're not supposed to, but it doesn't mean that they don't.
And plus, a lot of this, if you talk about internet speed, a lot of this has to do with, well, this actually, you know what? This is a good A+ and Network+ question. All right, you look at them. You look at the main internet providers. Which one's going to give you a dedicated line? Which one are you sharing? I mean, if you're going with a cable company, you're probably sharing the bandwidth, and if you're going with DSL, you're probably not.
But at the same point, DSL speed can't match the cable modem, with the exception if there's too many people, too many subscribers on that node.
Oh, sure. So then it gets down to, so in a real life situation, it just gets down to what do you need. If you need the same speed all the time, and you're willing to sacrifice for a slower speed, well, then you go with DSL. I mean, if you're willing, and if you want the faster speed, knowing that, you know, everybody else is on Netflix at night too, then, you know, you go with the cable modem and you live with it. So,
and for me, actually, DSL is faster than cable modem because I'm literally right across the street from the node for the DSN line. The closer you are for DSL to the node, the faster it's going to be in that regard.
yeah, well, there you go then, see. So here's the thing. When you get a situation like this, whether it's a test question or not, okay, two things. Number one, know your different speeds. Number two, remember that the turtle always wins when you're talking about connecting two different devices. Thirdly, you know, the other thing is, I know, Tristan, you didn't bring this up just yet, but the third thing to factor in is look for anything in a question that talks about distance. Because, you know, you're going to get, you know, from a regular Ethernet cable, you're going to get 100 meters, 328 feet. Most wireless signals are not going to be close to that good. So that's another thing to factor. The further away you are from the wireless access point, the worse the speed and the connection are. All these things are factors. And then look, here's the, hey, Caesar, nice talking to you. Thanks. So that reminds me, I need to get back with him on something. But anyway, the other factor is this. For any test question you get, whether it's something like this or other scenarios, other situations, don't make stuff up. Now, what do I mean by that? Only go with the information you presented in the question. Don't make any assumptions. And here's a little tip. You might get an answer that's outside the scope of the question. Well, that's the wrong answer. So, you know, for test questions, only interpret what you see. Don't worry about trying to stretch any scenario out. All right, Tristan, that was a good one. Yeah.
The other thing that I was thinking of too with this scenario is, and you were just starting to touch on it, was the wired side of it. Distance, routing, type of wire, interference.
Yeah.
That's a good A+
exactly.
thing too.
Sure. Now, if you're getting a test question like, you know, what's the most reliable means of communication here, you know, they don't, here's the thing, if they don't give you the distance, if they don't tell you how many people are on the network, well, then it's just strictly wired versus wireless. Now you're just dealing with very strictly 11AC versus the Ethernet. The standard, I mean, nobody gets 1.3, but the fastest that theoretically you can get is 1.3. All right, wireless is probably better in this case. I mean, if this is a gigabit port, these are fast Ethernet ports, then clearly wireless is going to be your better choice. So that was a good one. Okay, what else do we have?
I got a quick question, Jason. George.
Yeah. What's up?
What would cause your CPU to be running at 100%?
Hopefully not a virus.
Well, I ruled out the virus, and the reason why I asked is because my CPU speed on my laptop was running at 100%. And I looked at the services, you know, based on your video, following those examples. I looked at the services. I looked at, you know, the startup, what was running and things like that. And I could not get it to throttle down past 100%. Now I had to start out with that because the second part of it is what I did was, you know, working on my computer, my lock screen keeps coming on about 2 minutes. So I said, well, let me turn this off because it's starting to get annoying because I got to sign in every time I log into the computer, you know, to do some work. So I went to the control panel, the screen settings, and things like that. And for some reason, in playing with it, I came across the power options. So I went to the power options and I set my power options to the default setting. But I don't remember ever going in and setting any power options. But once I did that, you know, looking at the computer, I went to control panel, task manager, and called the task manager up, and lo and behold, my CPU speed went all the way back down, and I think it was a result of me changing the power options. So my question is, can the power options have an effect on the CPU speed being at 100?
Sure. Sure, they can. It just depends. Sure.
Okay, I didn't know that. So it's probably
that's okay. And then
but
no, it's a good question.
So,
yeah, well, the other thing is, I mean, if you have, I mean, this is not very common, but I mean, an app can take over. Look, here's a general answer, George, to your situation. Apps can take over Windows processes. By that I mean an app. If you have a certain app, let's say it's, I don't know, I'm not asking what you run. That's neither here nor there. But let's say, I don't know, a game that people will have. Sometimes the game can have some language built into it that says, okay, well, whatever the power setting is on the machine, you know, override that right now. And if the app being developed has the permissions to do administrative things, to take over. Wow, Jim just gave us a Windows tip. I'm surprised he didn't write it in Linux. I'm sure that equivalent's coming soon. Anyway, so
running in Linux is so much easier. It's 5 words. I mean,
you opened that door.
Yeah, I know I did. I shouldn't have. But, you know, it's Jim. He's a nice guy. What can we do? But anyway. So to continue answering the question, George, so basically, you know, listen, apps people build can take over Windows stuff. They can take over your power options. They can take over your directories. They can take over your personalization settings, whatever. Now, a lot of people are going to say that's bad practice. I'm not here to debate that. All I'm telling you is it can do that, and it can take up processor power. The other thing that you want to look for in taking up your processor power, all right, I had an A+ class I was doing in an actual classroom once, and you know, I had an unusual request, and then said, hey, can I bring a server in from blah, 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 my workplace, and can we troubleshoot? I said, well, what's wrong with it? Well, see if you guys can figure out this riddle. They said, well, about every 15 minutes or so, it goes, woo, and the CPU's at 100%. Okay. I said, is it server in production? They're like, well, we'll take it out. I said, oh, bring it in then. So we brought it in. We flipped the thing on. Now, what do you think was the first thing we brought up? If we're trying to troubleshoot CPU here?
Look at the fan or the
Task Manager. Okay, so this is what I did. Now listen, I know I'm on a Windows 10 machine, but just play along. Okay, so Task Manager here. Ooh, look at my CPU right now. This is, I don't know what's running. Let me click on the column to put this in descending order. Apparently one of the websites. You know what? that goat's meeting might be eating up the CPU right now for all I know. But anyway, that's a good example here. And I'll admit to you all, I'm pretty lazy. I don't close the browsers as much unless I turn the machine off. But okay, so this is eye usage. So what we did was we babysat this thing, and sure enough, about every 15 minutes or so, the fan went nuts, made a big noise, CPU was going. All we did was sit here and figure out what it was, and what it was their antivirus software would kill this, would crush the CPU every time it was checking for an update. And it was checking for an update every 15 minutes. And so we did a little, Google search on it, and it turns out it was fairly common with this antivirus provider. And the antivirus provider was actually out of business. They couldn't sell enough entirely because they made bad software. My point to all of you is human beings write these apps. They're not perfect. They can do bad things to your machine sometimes, as in the case of George and his CPU problem. The key is to know how to find it, which George did. So kudos to you, George. But yeah, just understand that, and this is outside. Listen, this is outside the scope of A+. But just understand, people who build apps, they can take over anything they want on your machine. How do you think? Look, how do you think viruses get started? People writing apps that take over stuff on your machine. The difference is they're doing it for malicious reasons instead of something noble.
So that's another good reason for Linux.
Well, part two to that, Jason, is so the antivirus software that you put on your machine, depending on what kind it is,
yeah.
Does that help at all, or they can get around that and still, do what they do?
Well, if they write a virus that's sophisticated, there's a couple different viruses, or a couple different, I should say, malware pieces. We got to be careful how we use the terms, just because there are different forms of malware out there, all right? But can they write something to get around your system? Well, yes, you hope that it doesn't happen to you, but I mean, there's, like, one example of malware is called a rootkit. It goes right past your system, gets into the root of your machine. Those are really hard to get out. There's what are called zero-day attacks, which are attacks on a machine that antivirus providers have had 0 days to come up with a fix. It's basically what it does is they're taking advantages of vulnerabilities in people's code. So to answer your question, yeah, there's a few of those out there that can get pretty nasty. But it all gets back to really just being careful where you click. I'm not saying you, George, but just I'm saying for people you support in general. I mean,
right.
I mean, it's just so bad. It's just so bad nowadays. I mean, you could be on a website like, I'll tell you, and I'm not trying to pick on anybody, although Jim might get a chuckle. I mean, you take a website like MSN, the kind of default homepage for Microsoft Edge, and they got their news stories up at the top, and then they have their, they got all those links down below of like, ooh, this celebrity did this, or what does this person look like now, and all this nonsense, and
right.
those get going to the bad sites.
Oh, okay. That could explain it, because I've had that up.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, I'll tell you all this, and this is a little bit of off the subject, whatever. But it's like, okay, if I see a story like that, I'll just search for it on Google instead of clicking the direct link. Half the time it's bogus anyway, but if it's a legit story, I'm going to go read it off a legitimate website. Is my point. Never mind the fact that when you click those things, there's advertisements galore. There's all kinds of adware out there, but anyway. William has a question here. I use AVG. What antivirus software do you recommend? Well, AVG is pretty good. Avast is free and pretty good. This new PC I have in my house, I have got ESET with it for a year. It seems to be doing the job so far. The point is, the antivirus people that are in business now, most of them are actually pretty good. The most important thing is to keep your definitions updated. So no matter who you use, you definitely want to make sure you keep your definitions updated. That's to me, that's more important than the vendor that you choose. Now, obviously, there's a couple of vendors out there that got bad reputations as far as, like, years ago when I was doing support work, you know, we couldn't use this one vendor. Won't mention names. Starts with an M, ends with an E, has a C in the middle of it somewhere, and an A and an F and another E, but I didn't say it by name. Anyway, we installed that vendor's antivirus on our machines, and all our machines started blue screening. So we went a different direction. Biggest point on that is have protection on the machine, keep your definitions updated, and watch where you click. I'm not saying that to you all personally. I'm just saying tell whoever, you know, tell your family members, you know, those sob stories that they read about can also do other things to their machines and cause real sob stories.
Right.
Personally, I would recommend Kaspersky, Avast, and AVG. Not necessarily in those three orders.
Oh, but they're all good.
Right. The main reason I suggest that you don't want to go with the one that Jason will mention or its main competitor for
Starts with
two
an
big
N, ends
reasons.
with an N.
Right. Those two are still the leading manufacturer or the leading antivirus and firewall, but the problem is that's what the hackers will use because most people have it, and so
Exactly.
they build their malware around them. The other, especially since a lot of the computers come with a 30-day or 60-day. The other problem with those two big ones is they take up too much space, they use too much CPU,
Totally.
RAM, the whole 9 yards,
yeah.
And they have too much control over your computer.
Yeah. Yeah, so the three that Jim mentioned, no, they're all good. And you know, the other thing is, it's like it's the same. And I'm gonna blow Jim's. I'm gonna boost. I'm gonna put some air in Jim's head here for a minute. So I'm just warning everybody. Well, the same reason why most of the viruses that come out there, you know, they hit Windows machines. They don't care much about Linux or Mac because the audience share is so much smaller. So it's the same kind of principle with the antivirus, to where they are going to, you know, try to hack into people who have the two main vendors. So, and the fact is, Kaspersky and AVG and the Avast, you know, they do a good job of keeping their definitions updated. Now, personally, before I got this one with my computer here, I would go a little bit back and forth between AVG and Avast. Whichever version was easier to use at that time when I needed it, I just got it. So, like, I used AVG for a couple of years, and then their interface got kind of, I don't know, it was just tough to get. So I just switched over to Avast, and I used Avast for a while. So, but they're both good.
How about Malwarebytes?
Malwarebytes is excellent, in my opinion. As long as you keep the definitions updated.
You do have to be careful.
I've had good success with it.
And they fixed the problem, but Malwarebytes about a year ago had a 0-day attack built into it, and it took them about a month to get the patch out, which isn't too bad, except for the problem is it actually was downloading malware into your system before the patch was put out.
Yeah, that's not good.
But that's like with anything. You have to be careful. You have to do a little bit of research and stay current with any possible threat vectors.
Right. Can I help you a little bit, George?
Yeah. Part two to that question is, and after doing the research and realizing that they did fix it, and it's a good malware to run on your system, do you run that in addition to your malware software? I mean, you run it together or you run it by itself?
I've never used malware, but this is just me talking. I've never used malware by itself. I always used it in conjunction with AVG or VAST.
Okay.
Well,
That's what I heard, so I just want to make sure.
You don't only use Malwarebytes. That is basically to look for things that happen to get through the VAST or the ABG or whatever. As well as, have you ever had any experience with Spybot, Jason?
A long time ago. That you don't run by itself either.
Right. The other thing I would recommend, and I'd have to pull my disk out because I have it in USB. When you get ready to go out in the field, if you're going to be a field tech, get all of the tools like Malwarebot or Bytes, Spybot. There's a rootkit, a detector. You throw it all onto USB, and you boot into. It's got a little OS that you boot in to check for rootkits.
Okay. Now, you wouldn't want to run 2 antivirus softwares on your computer.
Well, a lot of people do. Better make sure you have enough RAM for that, and it's, you don't want to do it on a machine that's like 12 years old or something. But a lot of people do. A lot of servers have multiple protection mechanisms.
What
I'm not saying you have to do it, but to me the best. To me the best combination is one antivirus and then maybe one of the malware things. But go ahead, Jim.
If you're going to do that, I would recommend probably Clam AV for your secondary.
It's less overhead.
Yes. And it basically what you have to actually run it. It's not running in the background, so it is lower overhead, and you just run it. It depends on how often you're on the internet, what kind of site you go, maybe once a week or once a month, whatever. In addition to like I said, Kaspersky or AVG, Avast, one of those.
Okay, let me ask you this real quick. Since it's something that you have to run, can you go, and forgive me, I can't remember the name of the, it's in the control panel. It's a program where you set up and you can have things run automatically.
Yeah, you could do that. It's called, you're talking about scheduled tasks?
Right.
Yeah, you can have it run as a scheduled task. Just because I say you run it manually, I mean it's not running in the background automatically. So whether you do it as a scheduled task to run every so often or you run it yourself, I would actually recommend doing it as a scheduled task just to make sure you don't forget.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was getting at. Right. Jason, I got one more quick question. I know time is up. It's off the beaten path of A+, and I'm working toward the Net Plus and on and on and on. But have you heard anything about TCP/IP5?
No, not really.
Okay. I just heard somebody talking about it very vaguely, and I thought I would bring it up in this session.
No, I haven't been on a test objective, so I haven't really paid much attention to it. I'm kind of in a bubble here.
I'm just trying to get proactive. That's all.
Yeah.
I need to slow down.
They are coming out with a new Network Plus early next year, so the thing is, I haven't looked at the objectives yet, so.
Okay. That's all I got. Thanks. Appreciate it.
No problem. That was one of the fastest hours I've had here. Good thing.
Yeah,
and I hadn't seen Jim. And I hadn't seen Jim in a while, so he got like multiple shots in on us this time.
Well, Microsoft just makes it so easy.
So, okay, well, listen, everyone, thank you for the time. I will be on again Thursday. It's, what, 3 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Mountain, right, Tristan?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll do it again then.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it.